What's up, everyone? This is Morey Croson here from the Performance Lab of California, and we had another new breakdown for you today on Jalen Hurts. And this is going to be a very interesting breakdown just because I'm not only going to focus on Jalen Hurts and his throwing. I'm going to break it down into the 4 phases that we look at in terms of throwing. I've been working on this certification type of thing for quarterback coaches, anything like that. And, you know, part of what I think makes what we do a little bit different is just because of the focus on the biomechanics and the anatomy behind the actual throw. So it's not only about, you know, what are some of the keywords that quarterback coaches using, but also what are some of the definitive movement patterns and movement sequences that we're seeing within the throw. Today I'm just going to focus on the upper body just because I think that will give you the greatest idea of what it is that we're doing. So we're going to first start off with the first action of the throw. I call this the initial load. And if we look at the initial load, what are some of the things that we're seeing within the actual movement? So we look to see shoulder abduction, which means that the arm is moving away from the body, right? We see elbow flexion. It's a fairly easy one to understand. We see wrist extension. The reason I say it's wrist extension is because if the wrist is flexing, it's like if you're trying to flex and flex your forearms, right? And so you would have to kind of crunch your hand in order to do that. He's more keeping his hand away from his forearm, which is going in the other way in extension. And just by holding a football too, you're trying to keep the ball from obviously falling. So you're keeping yourself in a extended position. We're also seeing a slight upward rotation of the scapula, which just means that the scapula is going away from the body, as is a slight horizontal abduction as well, because we can see the elbow also going away, which, you know, is more of a Jalen Hurts style type of throw. We do see guys that just straight lift the ball up. That's why I say slight, because it's not necessarily a thing that is huge. You know, it just kind of depends on the actual athlete, but we do see, at least for Jalen Hurts, some slight horizontal abduction during the initial load, right? So that's here, initial load. And now what we're going to see is the elbow coming forward, right? So now elbow coming forward, boom. What are we seeing when we see elbow coming forward? In this motion here, we're seeing a horizontal adduction, right? So now it's the other way. The actual elbow and arm is moving towards the body, not away from the body. We were just in horizontal abduction. Now we're seeing horizontal adduction. We're also seeing shoulder external rotation. So the hand is getting back behind the arm, so that's shoulder external rotation. We're also seeing supination of the wrist, which means the wrist is coming around to the side. If you're pronating, if you think of your thumb, you have your thumb going in and downward, so it's getting closer to your body. That's going to be pronation. Supination is when your thumb is going outward. So if you're looking down at your hand and your hand is facing out to the side, then you're supinating. If your thumb is closer towards your body, if you're going inside and you're looking at the top of your hand, you're pronating. If you're looking at the palm of your hand, you're supinating. The other thing, we're still in wrist extension, and then we're also in shoulder retraction. And what that means is that you're just trying to pinch your shoulder blades together, pinch your scapulas together. And so that's what's happening at that phase of the elbow coming through, scapular retraction there. And then we're seeing the ball coming up and forward. So that's here, ball coming up and forward. That last part during the throw, right before the release. What we're seeing here, we're seeing shoulder flexion, right? The hand is up overhead, shoulder flexion. We're also seeing elbow extension. Okay, we're seeing that elbow going and finally extending as we're going through the actual throw. And then we're seeing scapular protraction. So that means the scapula is going away from the other scapula. So before you're pinching your scapulas, now you're letting that right one kind of release forward, and that's where like the punching type of motions really come into play, and understanding how that you punch really comes into play. So you got the scapular protraction, and then we also have the scapula upward rotation. There was some degree when we're trying to scapular retract in the last phase where you end up having some downward rotation, but now that you're actually releasing, it's going to be upwardly rotating within the scapula as well as protracting. We're also seeing pronation within the wrist. We were just talking about where we're seeing the top of the palm, and we're also flexing the wrist. So you're going through and actually finishing the throw. And then the last few things that we're seeing a bit of shoulder adduction, which means that the hand is coming in closer to the body, shoulders coming in closer to the body. That's a very slight movement, but more importantly, we're finishing horizontal adduction during the throw. And that's I think what comes up that is very interesting is there's just not a very big focus, I think, within quarterbacks to be able to horizontally adduct the shoulder, because you go so much into that loading phase. But you can see now that there's 3 different phases where, because now we're going into the follow through, and the first thing with the follow through is there's more horizontal adduction even when you're following through. So you've got to have plenty of range of motion within the pec, plenty of range of motion within the shoulder in order to properly horizontal adduct the body and finish a throw. The last thing is that we're seeing, or another thing that we're seeing, is internal rotation during the follow through. So now we're seeing the ball coming down. Now the pinky should be up, the thumb should be down. You're fully rotating your shoulder inwards. When you get into, this point, you're loading, you're getting into max external rotation, and then immediately coming into pronation of the wrist and internal rotation of the shoulder in order to deliver the throw. And then the last thing that we're seeing is we're seeing some the rest of scapular protraction as you're going away. So that means that the scapula is continuing to kind of push away from the body. If you're, the best way to think about it is the opposite of pinching your shoulder blades together. Retracting is pinching it together. Protraction is allowing it to go away, and that's what you're doing as you're actually throwing the ball here. So just wanted to give you guys a rundown of what are the actual movements, what are the actual actions from a scientific standpoint that you're going through during the actual throw. So now you can get a better understanding of what muscles to be able to develop for strength, what muscles to be able to develop for mobility and flexibility and range of motion, and how are you going to be able to combine the strength and the overall range of motion in order to deliver the best type of throw. Obviously, this is just a big focus on the upper body, and with my certification, we're going to go more in depth into what are these muscles, how do you train them, how do you test for them, right? What assessments can you do to make it so you can see if your quarterback, or as a quarterback, you're able to properly get to the right types of strengths, the right type of range of motions to even be able to do some of these movements in the first place. If you have limitations within the movement in itself on just a basic range of motion screen or assessment, then we know we're going to see flaws within the throwing mechanics. And I think that's where the biggest separation between somebody that is more of a health practitioner and somebody that's more of a just plain quarterback coach, that's where some of the separation happens, is that if you don't understand the anatomy, you don't understand how to actually assess the shoulder, then you could be trying to teach something that you're seeing that a quarterback might be making a mistake in their actual throw, and you're thinking of it as, oh, this is mechanical flaw, this is mechanical flaw, but really it's a range of motion flaw or a strength flaw or an inability to reach that range of motion in the scapula or the shoulder. And so what we will be able to do is just give more clarity for what are certain flaws that you're seeing within the throw, why are those happening, and giving you a guideline for how to exactly get there. Jalen Hurts, I think, does a great job in creating a large amount of overall core rotation and has a good, solid scapular foundation. So he has the right range of motions within the shoulder, within the wrist, within the shoulder, and also has a lot of range of motion within the thoracic spine, which I think really allows him to succeed. Can work a little bit on the lower body probably and help improve there, but it's really hard to get 100% in terms of, get everything flowing perfectly. So there's still some mechanical things that I think he can work on, but overall I think he does a really, really good job of achieving the basics in throwing the ball. And, hopefully this video will at least provide some value in understanding how complex just the throwing action is. And this is just looking at it from the upper body perspective. Obviously, we break it into the core and the lower body as well in the actual certification, but just want to give you a little bit more information about how we're going to be able to help you in better servicing your quarterbacks. We'll talk soon. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed it, and if you did, you can subscribe down below, and that way you can get updates on any of the new videos that we get. Also, if you want to, you can check out some of our other breakdowns for speed and throwing. We have exercises, also jumping mechanics videos, a lot of great stuff within our channel. Hope you enjoy.